Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Hashing It Out. I'm Jordan. I'm a senior software engineer here at the Nervos Foundation. And with me today is, of course, Matt Quinn, who is the executive director at the Nervos Foundation. Matt, how you doing this morning?
Pretty good, Jordan. Looking forward to another one of these. Yeah, I think there's so much to talk about in this one.
So we have a huge agenda to go through today. I know you were out speaking at Stanford recently. Are you still out in the area, or are you back in Florida now?
Back in Florida. Yeah, I flew out after the conference.
Back in Florida already. All right. Well, anyway,
yeah,
let's get started. And I gotta apologize in advance if we have some lag here. We're not sure what's going on. We have some minor technical issues. I seem to be jumping around all on my screen over here, but we're gonna make the best that we can do and get through this. So today we're going to be talking about Nervos ecosystem updates, and we're also going to cover some of the stuff in the community. But of course, before we get started, this is a live show, so we have to quickly go through the same three things I go through every broadcast, which is number one, we're not going to be talking about the price today. Number two, that we're not going to be talking about any future exchanges or any other confidential information like that. And number three, the opinions are expressed on this show are of the individuals, not of the Nervos Foundation itself. We are broadcasting live on YouTube and on Twitter right now. But if you want to be part of the conversation, we recommend that you join the YouTube channel because that's the only one that seems to be connected to our interface here that we can actually see. And feel free to throw out any questions you have. We will answer them at the end if we have time. So without further ado, let's get into it. Let's start with the Nervos Foundation updates. So Matt, what can you tell us about recent updates?
Yeah, so first off, from the hackathon front, so we've been running the CKBull Signer API hackathon. That'll run until the end of this week. I actually noticed on Twitter we had the first submission for that. So I would say to check out the CKBull Twitter. You can see the first submission for the hackathon. And yeah, that's exciting when somebody is ready to submit without even waiting to the last moment. And yeah, we've been doing a lot of content generation. I think content marketing strategy has been an important focus for this quarter and actually most of this year, to be honest. I think the ideas behind CKB really are what make advocates. So we want to continue just getting better information out there and really expressing the values of CKB and principles, kind of in the scope of the industry. So I would say to check out the nervos.org knowledge base. You can see all the work that the team's been doing to get content out there. There's a journey page that should be live on the website pretty soon. I think it's pretty much complete. There's just a couple things that need to be stripped out, and then it's going to be live. But the most common question I think people ask is, what is the roadmap? And because Nervos is a project that spans multiple organizations at this point, more than a handful. There is no kind of definitive roadmap. You just have a number of different things happening in different places, and this page should cover that too, so people can get some insight into everything that's going on the project. And yeah, I wanted to give a shout out to Lee and Kima for the work that they've been doing on the Reddit. I know that's really been reconstructed over the last few months, and yeah, excited to see where they take it from here, because that's a whole community outside of Twitter. And yeah, I think from the foundation end, those are the highlights for me.
All right, great. Yeah, let's back up to 1 second on CKBull. I just wanted to quickly mention that is very interesting. We have an early submission, and my guess on that is because it's actually a much easier system to integrate with. I tested that one out personally, actually, and it's a very simple API. I got to say, like once you actually get into it, this is remarkably simpler than some of the integrations that in the past that have used MetaMask. So CKBull, hats off to you. You've done a very good job getting that, making that easier for developers to integrate with. So let's see. Let's move into CKB. I know we have a huge amount of updates that have been coming with that. So the first one I'll go through is the Light Client fork. So that is now out in the current version of CKB, which is version 0.110.1. The main purpose of this is to speed up the Light Client. Like some of you may have used the Light Client, which is now present in Neuron. It's present as an option there, and it still takes several hours to get going. But once it's up to speed, it's completely synchronized, it's actually using very, very little disk space. So it's kind of like, this is kind of one of those incremental rollouts that we have to go through And so this is the next portion of that is the soft client fork. So now that it's actually out and it's been distributed to all the miners, the signaling is beginning on September 1st. So that's actually today, the signaling is beginning. And hopefully we will have activation, full activation on October 1st, which we need 80%. And I think we're probably going to get that. I mean, it's pretty safe to say we're going to get that. So hopefully everything will go smoothly and we'll have full activation October 1st. And then in the months after that, we will have much, much quicker light client synchronization, which is really what we're going for in this whole thing, because it's a very important thing to the ecosystem for developers in general to have that option of a true light client that keeps things truly decentralized, but it gives you the full power of a full node without having to do that synchronization, because we know that doesn't work. That doesn't work on cell phones, right? And that doesn't work for a lot of casual users. So it should give a lot of power for that. Let's see. Next one. Let me mention the hard fork too, which is coming right off the back of the soft fork. So we have a hard fork coming up. That's the CKB 2023 hard fork. It got postponed a little bit. Part of that is because they needed to get this soft fork out early before the main hard fork. So the soft fork is going to come first. We'll get the hard fork out after that. This one has some pretty interesting stuff coming in it again for developers. CKB VM version 2 is coming in this one. So this has support for the RISC-V extensions, and it also has a bunch of micro optimizations, which are increasing the efficiency of it even further, reducing cycles and execution time, which gives us, of course, more capacity in the long run. All the full nodes running on those Raspberry Pis, we're going to keep making sure that those continue to run well into the future, even when activity on the chain picks up. But the most interesting one I should mention is the Spawn syscall, which is also coming with a bunch of debugging enhancements. This one, as a developer, is very interesting because it is enabling much more of the Lego block functionality that we keep talking about. We're trying to put together these Lego blocks so you can really build components of your smart contracts that are reusable and stackable together. The Spawn syscall is another component in that. We had similar methods, things that are similar to that purpose. Execute if you're a developer and you're familiar with that, but it's not exactly the same as Spawn. Spawn is a better, much more friendlier version of it. So anyway, it's exciting stuff coming up. We're looking, hopefully targeting mainnet for the CKB 2023 hard fork a little bit early next year. So again, it's the 2023 hard fork because that's when it's finalized. Everything is already ready, but we have to get the soft fork out first. So it'll probably come early next year. Okay, and the next one is CKB enhancements. Matt?
Yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to add on Spawn. Yeah, I think everyone gets the ideas of CKB in conceptually, like you can use any wallet. But I think what the core developers have found in practice is that to really make things ergonomic and useful for developers, there's a little more needed. So I know that the CKB auth has been something that's been trending as we see support for all these new lock scripts being added, and yeah, all that depends on this Spawn functionality to make it as easy as I'm a developer. I want anyone to be able to use my application to bring any wallet to it. And I know we've seen that in concept, but we really like .bit has done it, but across the board we haven't seen this yet. And I think once we get the hard fork in and all this rolls out, I think we'll see a lot more things like .bit in the ecosystem. And yeah, so on the other enhancements, so yeah, there's some transaction pool enhancements that are coming. So we're used to the idea of if you pay a higher fee, then your transaction gets in faster. There were some updates that were needed in the CKB node to make that happen across the network. So you can expect that pretty soon. There's also the live sell commitment. So this will be powerful in cross-chain applications. So right now, the CKB block headers don't contain all, I guess, a authenticated data structure, for lack of a better word, of all of the information that's currently on the chain. So all that is derived from running all the transactions through. But after this live sell commitment is in place, you'll be able to take your CKB block header and say bring it to another chain and be able to prove a value of what's on CKB at a certain point in time. And yeah, I think I'm looking forward to seeing what people can do with this. It's pretty powerful functionality, but it is quite abstract. So I think it will take some time. But I think from the core development side, at least at this stage of the project, there's a lot of just getting the right things in place so that nothing needs to change, far off into the future.
Right. And then on the heels of that, what can you tell us about the developer components?
Yeah, so this is mostly, I think if people have been watching the project, they're aware of a lot of these things. So CKB standard, the standard library, that's out there, and I think just receiving some enhancements. CKB Lua, which is a new programming language supported on CKB. I think support's been out for about 6 months. So it's a high-level language, but it compiles down to C. So developers who wouldn't feel comfortable writing in C can write contracts in Lua. And at the end of the day, it'll compile the same and you'll get similar performance to writing things in C. I mentioned CKB Auth earlier. So I think there's support for 10 different wallets in CKB Auth now. Monero, Ripple, Litecoin, and Solana, I think, are the most recent ones. But with this library, you'll be able to also include support for something like what JoyID uses, so people can use native wallets on their devices. There's also CKB BLS, which is a BLS signature library, and libECC, which is mostly just an optimized version of the cryptographic algorithm that JoyID uses. So we're seeing the core team finding new ways to pack even more transactions into these blocks. It's in a lot of ways, forward-looking. But because of the generalized nature of CKB and just executing RISC-V, once the core devs see things out there, like this libECC was just an optimization that somebody had put into a cryptographic library, and they tried it out to see how it would run on CKB, and it turns out it's more than, I guess, twice as efficient than what was being used prior. And there's also Sphinx, which is a quantum resistant lock. And again, all this won't be news to people who've been watching all the dev updates, but when you think about it, when you step back from a distance and you see that not only is CKB running, say, the passkeys that you can control these keys with your device, but we're actually seeing optimizations being pulled in from outside of this team, and this really is work that's inheriting what's going on in the broader industry, and seeing like a quantum resistant lock script being tested. I'm not aware of any other blockchain that you can do quantum resistant cryptography on, but theoretically someone could today secure their CKB using a quantum resistant lock script, and then they could go live on an island for the next 50 years and not be worried about those CKB being lost once quantum computers reach a certain stage.
Yeah. Well, I think that's an important one to just emphasize a little bit more about what Sphinx is. That is a quantum resistant lock. We're getting closer and closer to quantum computers every day, and so that's been something that's been brought up in many other ecosystems. Is what do we do if quantum computers become a reality? They tend to happen really quickly. And that has the potential to break certain forms of encryption that we use for security on all blockchains. So some want to get way ahead of that. And when you look out there, it's a lengthy process. It always is a lengthy process. But here we are on Nervos. We have it already, right? And there was no major effort here. There was no hard fork or anything needed, because all of our encryption is done at the smart contract level. It's already done. It's for those who have been following the feed. This is already old news. They're probably sick of hearing this already. But you got to realize that this is the future of other chains, which has not happened yet. It's old news on Nervos. So I mean, this is just another example of why the flexibility on the platform actually matters, is because you can get so far ahead of this kind of stuff.
Yep, I think that's all that I have on the core dev side there.
Okay, yeah, let's move into standards. So we have one new standard that I should mention, which is the Spore NFT standard, which was actually, I believe that was used in the Memfest competition recently. So this is a new standard from Cryptape, which is kind of the opposite of Coda in many ways. So Coda is the other NFT standard, which I've mentioned many times before, uses a concise representation on chain with sparse Merkle trees, which gets you really, really great low costs. The trade-off, though, is that most of the data is not on-chain. It's actually held off-chain, and it's basically just the proof data that is held on-chain. This new standard, Spore, is the opposite, which addresses more use cases. So we have on Nervos a wider selection of things for developers. Everything, all components of the data on Spore are on-chain, including if it's an image NFT, you can put the actual image on-chain. In any format you want. You can include video if you wanted to, although because it's all on chain, it's going to be much more expensive. So probably not recommended for most cases, right? Your CryptoKitty equivalent is going to be very expensive if you try to put it on layer 1 using the Spore standard. So I probably wouldn't recommend that. But this does work very well for certain other things. It depends entirely on your use case, of course. Like, for example, a CryptoPunk, for example, an NFT worth tens of thousands of dollars potentially, that I could see that being on chain, right? I could see that being fully on chain, as well as the future of what may be represented by NFTs, something like real estate, for example, where you have high value items. It makes perfect sense. So anyway, it's good to have this in the ecosystem as another option because we need to have that full range of what Nervos has to offer. And now we can give much strong long-term guarantees on NFTs by making sure that the complete data is actually represented and propagated to all full nodes. Okay, so let's go into the next one. Speaking of nodes, the CKB Node Probe was put out recently, and that's at nodes.ckb.dev if you haven't seen it. And actually, let me try to pull it up and put it on screen. Let's see if this works, just so we can take a quick look. Just give me 1 second. I got to approve it on show it on one screen and prove it on the next screen, and here we go. Okay, so we're up to 225 today. So there's been new enhancements that have been done to this recently to try to find some more of the nodes that were kind of hidden out there. So if anybody remembers, when we first launched this, it was showing only 100 nodes. That number has gradually increased, and they've changed around the algorithms or whatever, and now it's up to over 200. I saw it actually over 250 at one point. So they're going to keep working on that. We'll see where that goes. But in the meantime, everybody who's running a full node, thank you very much for helping out with the network. And we hope to see more of those in the near future. So let's see. Let's go back to the agenda. Developer documentation. I got to mention some stuff on the developer documentation. We've been making a bunch more improvements to that. There have been incremental improvements to docs.nervos.org. We've also done a bunch of work on RFCs recently. There's been creation of a new repository, the CKB SDK examples GitHub repository, which is going to be loaded up shortly with a lot more examples, much more emphasis on easy to run code for developers in every different language that we support. And then also there's been the launch of CKB Academy, which is another location, another central point for learning materials. It's a little bit more limited scope than docs.nervos.org, but it's and more focused specifically on the learning materials themselves. So anyway, there's been a bunch of small updates out there, and of course we're going to continue into making these improvements into the foreseeable future. Let's see, next on the list is research. What can you tell us, Matt?
Yeah, so sorry. One exciting thing recently is there was a report about all of the open transactions research that has taken place this year that was posted in Nervos Talk. That is quite dense, but the concept of open transactions is really exciting. That you could have this idea of a completely off-chain order book exchange. You could exchange different assets, NFTs, things like that. So that research, I think, opened up a lot of questions, and it's kind of unclear what will become of a standard there. So the team has taken a step back on that after producing that report. I suggest everyone who's really interested in the promise of CKB to check it out and to start some discourse in the community about it, because I think it opens up a lot of questions. But the old adage goes, more eyes make shallow bugs. So I think the more people thinking about how we can actually accomplish these things out there with open transactions, because I think the promise is clear. That the first time that this paradigm was described was shortly after launch, and yeah, I think we just need a lot of people thinking about this to see kind of what is the elegant way of accomplishing this. There's also been UDT standard research. I know XUDT is the one that has received the most attention recently. That I think has kind of gotten to a point where something's been implemented on testnet. It'll get pushed to mainnet soon, but that research is complete as far as I'm aware. The big focus as far as research goes, from what we've been told, is around composability. So I mentioned before about making it easier for developers to use a variety of different lock scripts, and present them in a unified interface, a single application. So you could have an application that truly was universal, as has been messaged for multiple years now. But you could just have someone land on a web page, and then they could use any one of 10 different wallets from different chains to use an application. And there's work going on to really deliver that, to make it easy to use for developers. And there's also research starting on app interoperability. So I know, Jordan, this is something you've touched on a number of times, about how can you actually have the scripts of different applications work together without having to be directly aware of exactly how things are implemented in each application, but rather have these kind of standards around how data is stored and how different things on CKB interact with each other. Yeah, that's, I mentioned open transactions before and the challenges in implementing that. And I think this idea around app interoperability or type and lock script interoperability, that's an even bigger question. But I think it's a similar kind of work where we're just having to come up with standards. I think the real power of CKB is in its generalizability, generalization, and you can think about just the hardware in your computer, and just you could make that do anything, but you really need to have standards of things so they can work together and so that things can be useful. And yeah, I think the CKB has different problems than other chains, but yeah, once these things are in place and people have done all the hard work to make sense of it, it's a really powerful paradigm. But yeah, plenty of work to be done on the research side right there.
Yeah. Let me add to that. I mean, one of the things that has been spoken several times by people who have learned the cell model and truly gotten deep enough into it to near mastery or very high proficiency level is they actually recognize that the flexibility that Nervos actually provides with the cell model is a double-edged sword to some extent. It is extremely powerful in what you can do, but at the same time, it gives you such a blank, empty canvas that it's kind of hard to tell which direction to go sometimes. So all of this is part of that effort. It's to help pave the way here and find what is the best path, because a lot of times we're presented as developers when we're dealing with Nervos, there's 5 different ways to do something. Which way is going to be best? And we don't always have an answer for that because it's highly subjective. And sometimes we just haven't gone down all of these paths ourselves to actually tell the developer this is the way you should absolutely do it. So this continued research is going down these different paths. It's fixing some of the little things that we have found along the way, which are stumbling blocks for some of the developers out there. And really, I've talked about open transactions several times in the past before. I'm still excited about that one. I'm glad we made a lot of progress on this, and I'm really looking forward to that being picked up. But I completely understand why they have had to take a step back and investigate the script composability and app interoperability again, because those are the foundational blocks, right? Those are at the very bottom. Open transactions and UDT standards, those are up here, right? So they need to do a little bit more work on the foundation before they can go back and finish open transactions. So anyway, continued progress being made, and we're looking forward to more of that. Let's move on to Godwoken, because there's been some concern about that recently. Matt, what can you tell us about Godwoken?
Yeah, so I think the messaging has been clear from Jan. From a technical perspective, Godwoken is in maintenance mode, and from the foundation end, we're here to support that ecosystem and ensure that chain stays alive, and to support the community how we can. So the V1 withdrawal finality time is being reduced to 7 days. I think that's gone in. I think there's a number of questions of why it was 9 days. If people still have questions of why it's 7 days, you can look at how optimistic rollups work and get the answer there. V0 is on its way to deprecation. So up until recently, you could still deposit CKB into Godwoken V0, and that is going to be turned off if it's not already off. And over time, people will be nudged to get everything out of V0, because that network, I think V1's been live for more than a year now. So V0 really, people need to get everything out of there. And yeah, we did get some research about Godwoken V2 and Axon. I think that there's still a lot of questions there of how that might work, but that seems to be what the intended direction is. But yeah, no timeline or pathway there. So yeah, Godwoken is still out there, and I think for anyone in the Nervos community that is interested in deploying things and may find CKB too intimidating to work with, you can deploy Ethereum compatible things on Godwoken, and that will continue to be there. And yeah, here to support the community on that front.
Okay, and so yeah, the last thing that was a point there was Godwoken version 2, and I just wanted to highlight that is still something that's in discussion right now. They're still trying to figure out exactly which way they want to go on it. Moving it over to Axon is a possibility, because those who are familiar with both projects, there's a lot of overlap there. So they might actually, it might make sense from a development standpoint to merge the two projects completely. In which case, Godwoken 2 may take on Axon in the future as its main backend. So that's not official yet, but that's definitely a possibility. So speaking on Axon next, so interoperability on Axon continues to be one of the primary focuses on it. One of their stated goals with Axon is to be much more than EVM. We know that it is an EVM chain, but they want to go beyond that. They want to make this actually something that is much more attractive to general developers than being just simply another EVM chain. So one of the things that they're working with on that is they want to have closer interaction with layer 1, which means that the EVM contracts actually will have the ability to communicate and actually execute contracts on layer 1, effectively giving them access to CKB VM and a cell model, for that matter, within DApps that are on layer 2. So the first one that's taking advantage of that is Khalani, which we've talked about in the past. It's actually a project that is dual. It's using both EVM and CKB VM at the same time. So it's taking advantage of the ecosystem of EVM, which gives certain benefits to programming. Of course, all the library and tooling that's out there, and some of the compatibility that it has with interoperability on other chains, and then CKB VM, which is a different level, different types of strengths, other powers, and also another level of interoperability because of the crypto primitives that it supports. We can actually get much more wider approach to the entire thing, and that's what Kalani is trying to do. It's trying to create universal liquidity, so it's essential that you actually have the interoperability built into that. And one more thing I want to mention on Axon, which is pretty interesting, is that in 2023 Q3 here, they're actually going to start doing some of the early testing on staking and election mechanism. This means that proof of stake is going to be coming in the future. No definite timeline yet, but it's making progress on that. And this is something that I think a lot of people in the community are probably going to be looking forward to, because in the future that means the ability to run a staking node and actually stake something and get some additional earnings, which is different than mining, different type of form. So node operators that don't have the ability to run very noisy hot hardware can actually have some earning potential there as well. So anyway, looking forward to that. Early testing just beginning. We don't have any end date or when it's actually going to be rolled out on testnet just yet, but it is coming. Let's see. So we also had some work done on wallets. What do you have for us, Matt?
Yeah, so the light client is going to be the most important thing, and as we covered before, that hopefully should be activated in the next couple months. And yeah, right now it does take still a bit of time to sync, but after a couple updates, yeah, it should be near immediate and take up almost no space. And when you think about that from an application perspective, and users have the equivalent of a full node on their desktop, yeah, we can see some really interesting applications emerge. And right now the team is working on Wallet Connect support, so there'll be a proof of concept for that pretty soon. as well as support for chain transactions and cell management. So this gets into more advanced CKB kind of things that application developers could implement in time, and then users will be able to use. We got word that the Neuron team will be integrating the Spore NFT standard, which we already covered what Spore is, and then there's work with Polycrypt to integrate the Perun payment channels work into Neuron. So we'll actually have the ability for people to do microtransactions with Neuron and integrated with web applications when we see Wallet Connect or these kind of other integrations. And yeah, you can expect that work to wrap up by the end of the year. Unclear when we'll see things on mainnet in that regard, because mainnet involves audits and lots of bigger considerations, and maybe there'll be some iterations of the channels. But I would say definitely by the end of the year, the community will have things to play with on testnet with payment channels.
Yeah, exciting stuff.
CKBull, I guess.
For me personally, yeah, I was just going to say that I'm excited to see what the Perun payment channels can do, because we did a previous episode of hashing it out specifically about that, and it's interesting technology. The ability to do, I believe there were over 100 transactions per second. Of course, these are all just sending back and forth between two parties. So highly scalable infrastructure. It's kind of the equivalent of Bitcoin's Lightning Network to some extent. So early version, of course, yeah, we're not going to expect the moon from this one, but you know, this is very interesting to see this stuff come up and come up in such a big way. So anyway, sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead, CKBull.
Yeah, no, I'm also excited about it. Yeah, it's CKBull. So we saw the Signer API launch, I think, a couple months ago, and we've been running this hackathon. Yeah, we saw the first implementation of that today, and yeah, looking forward to more people submitting their projects over the weekend. I think development on CKB has always been challenging, but it's been encouraging to see people put certain abstractions in place and to really to make it more approachable. I think, you know, from a first principles standpoint, CKB makes a lot of sense, but you know, so does the piece of hardware, you know, on your laptop that you're looking at. But you need to have those layers of abstraction put in there to really make it usable for people. And from my opinion, it's been quite encouraging to speak with teams that are building that middleware to make it easier for others, and to hear that their experience has been very positive, even compared to other, you know, popular chains that CKB has been very nice to develop with, if you're operating at the appropriate levels. And as we kind of build those layers up, hopefully that carries through, you know, for everybody, and we see a much more elegant developer experience.
Yeah, I think that, just to touch on that very quickly, that's something that's worth mentioning, is that the cell model in particular with L1, it definitely has that learning curve, which scares away some developers, but others, once they actually get deep enough, like CKBull and Polycrypt, they both had to get deep into the weeds to really understand it completely before they could complete their applications. And once they did, they actually liked the platform quite a bit. That it had a lot of power, and this is also considering that it's our other UTXO chains out there. Like, there's certain things out there, different types of angles that you have to look at, and they really liked the directions that Nervos had taken things, from a developer standpoint. That it actually works very well. So anyway, let's keep moving on though. Next one is infrastructure. We have a couple things, updates on that. First one, JoyID. Which they recently announced that they found a way to support Ethereum, and so they're going to be going multi-chain in a big way. So this is pretty big news, and I honestly don't fully understand how it even works yet. I'm not sure if they've completely released all the details on that, because previously we thought this was actually going to be impossible, because of the Ethereum doesn't properly support the SECP256R1 algorithm, but apparently they found some way to do some kind of a translation. So I'm sure we'll be all finding out exactly how that works in the coming months. But it's a very exciting news. And so they've also announced that they're going to be integrating with Nostr for login, which was made popular by Jack from Twitter, Jack Dorsey, who tweeted out, and there's a lot of clients out there. It's a more decentralized version of Twitter, right? And then they've also announced support for EVM-based wallets. So JoyID is continuing to expand their reach on what they're actually able to do for users and attract to it. And they're working a lot on the full-featured account recovery features that they've been talking about for quite some time, like a multiple device backup. They wanted you to be able to recover from your Apple ID or your Google account. Or actually, if you want to go back to using mnemonic phrases, they're going to actually enable that kind of stuff too. Or external hardware. If you have Bluetooth, USB, or NFC-based hardware devices, those types of things that are hardware-based key managers, you're going to be able to integrate all of those with JoyID. So they're taking this really wide approach to what they're going to be offering here as a product. And it's exciting to see, especially with this stuff around Ethereum. That's very big news. And they're going to be ahead of the pack a little bit on this one. We could see a lot of pickup on JoyID because of this. Let's see. Anything to add to that, or do you want to move on to Khalani?
Yeah, I do think that more information about exactly how it works will be published pretty soon. But yeah, it's exciting, and from what I understand, CKB plays a role in all of this, making all of this work. And yeah, to me, it's magic. I mean, I didn't know what to think when I first heard it. I just thought they were using the same tricks as everyone else. But yeah, we're gonna see. I mean, I think the one thing that seems to be constant within this ecosystem is that people are doing things differently and innovating, and that doesn't always get you all the attention at the time. It just, maybe we just look like the oddball. But on a long enough timeline, I think this really makes a difference. So it's really exciting.
Okay, so next on the list is Kalani. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so Kevin gave us an update about this and some of his ideas around where Kalani will go. So there's been a testnet launch, so you can follow Kalani on Twitter. You can get on there and move liquidity around. But yeah, Kevin's ambitions for Kalani are much bigger. So there's recently been this trending topic, the notion of intents, INTENTS. Within the broader industry, it's kind of like the hot topic after account abstraction in terms of the researchers and kind of the cool kids in the industry. And it's the promise is similar to an open transaction in that you're just signing a message saying, I have this turtle NFT and I want someone to send me 1,000 CKB in exchange, and they can get this turtle NFT, and I can just fire and forget. I can just sign this message, put it out there to the world, and if somebody wants to fill the other side of that trade, then they will, and it'll complete. There's no smart contract risk, anything like that. It's just as simple as I sign a message, I put it out there saying what I want to happen, then somebody else that wants to pick up the other side of that signs it as well. So the idea with Kalani is to utilize the UTXO functionality of CKB along with Axon to kind of accomplish the DeFi-like objectives with the EVM, but also this idea of something like an open transaction or an intent where someone can just sign a message and then they can have what they're looking for happen. I think a lot of this is pretty early. We've only just seen brainstorms at this point. And yeah, I was going to show Kevin's slide, but I think it's better to have him explain all these things because honestly, I'm not the best at the DeFi stuff. And I think he does have a really compelling pitch and idea behind what he's doing. And I wouldn't want to, I guess, get ahead of that. But it does look like they're going to be moving forward with all this new, I guess, vision for Kalani over the course of the rest of this year. And yeah, we should see things on testnet, I guess, within that time frame. And yeah, I think the goal is to just make all this interchain stuff work better and to get around some of the issues that we've seen thus far.
Right. Yeah, I think it's worth just adding a little bit on there to give a better example of what an intent would be. And why it affects certain things like scalability, for example, especially on the UTXO model. It's basically taking a transaction from, say, like, I want to trade this coin with Matt and signing that transaction, which is a very specific thing. I will do this and Matt will give me this in return, a very specific. It's changing it to more like I am selling this token for this price, and anybody can fulfill that transaction, right? And so it doesn't matter who's on the other end as long as the intent is honored, which I was selling this coin for this specific price. So this enables scalability, again, because anybody can fulfill that. It allows these pieces to just kind of fit together rather than having this rigid structure. And so for Khalani, this is also important because we're not just dealing even with one chain anymore. Kalani is a multi-chain project. It's supposed to try to enable liquidity, universal liquidity. So it's much more important because now it's not just me exchanging with another coin on one specific chain. It's putting out there, again, the intent. I want to do this exchange or something, or I need liquidity of this amount. And I don't care which chain it comes from. I just need it, right? So these types of guarantees, intents are actually very difficult, complex thing to express on blockchain networks. But Kalani has found some new innovations and a way to do this that we don't think the industry has really seen before. So anyway, this is some interesting stuff we're really looking forward to, and it's going to be coming up quick. I know they're making those pushes, so maybe as early as next year we'll start to see some of that. Let's see. So let's move on to some of the community stuff. So we want to recognize some of the stuff that's been going on in the community because there's been quite a bit of it lately. Number one, NFT Nation is now officially open and in mainnet beta. And so mainnet beta, what that means is they're fully live. They're selling NFTs just like you would expect, but there's some new features that are being added to it still. Some of the things that really didn't work that great in the beginning. Like I think there was the search features were pretty weak there. So they're continuing to work on some of that stuff and get it really up to par with some of the other NFT marketplaces that are out there. And they're also looking into L1 support. That's under investigation. And that would start, if they do that, it's probably going to start with the Spore standard. So they're looking into they're on EVM2 right now, layer 2. They want to do layer 1 as well. So we're looking forward to that, especially since we don't really have a marketplace on L1 anymore. Back since Collect closed its doors, unfortunately, at the beginning of the bear market. So this would fulfill that need, get us something on that is actually functional on both layers, on layer 2 and layer 1. So exciting stuff going on with that. Let's see. The next one is, so Nervos Nation released a new explainer video on the cell model. So this one is a very long. I believe, is the longest one they've done so far.
Yeah, we'll play it right now for the next 13 minutes.
Yeah, so we're not gonna. We're just joking. Of course, we're not gonna play it right now because it is quite a long video. There's a lot of information that they stuck into that video because the cell model is, of course, a very deep topic. Very difficult to explain concisely, and believe me, they tried. Right, I'm the guy answering a lot of their questions, and I know they had a lot of them on this one, just trying to get the size of that video down. But as much as effort was put into to cram this thing down, it's still over 10 minutes. Anyway, that's on the Nervos Nation YouTube channel. So just search for Nervos Nation on YouTube, and that should pop right up. We want to give a shout out to Phill in the community, who's been doing a whole bunch of work on Raspberry Pis. He put together a great guide on full nodes for how to set it up on a Raspberry Pi. And I believe that made it into the knowledge base. Is that right, Matt?
Yep.
Yeah. And then he also, he put out some 3D printed Nervos cube cases, which I'm going to try to share my screen again here because you guys got to see this. These things look fantastic. Let's see, share over here and share over here. There we go. Yep. So this is outstanding. I mean, these really look fantastic to me. And these are running, I believe it's an Orange Pi 3. So it's just a very cheap little piece of hardware. You slap on one of these 3D cases and you have a full node that is just running out there. I mean, and that's part of the reason why, like we mentioned earlier, we have all these optimizations that keep coming. It's to make sure that Nervos keeps running smooth on these Raspberry Pis so we can keep getting that node count up over time. So yeah, very interesting stuff. Yeah, thank you, Phill, for putting that together. He has the 3D plans are actually out there, by the way. They're on, what's the name of that site? It's called like Thinger or something. I'll put the link in the show notes on YouTube. For everybody, in case you want to print one out yourself. And then let's see, the last thing that we should mention is the Nervos CKB L1 halving, which is now less than 3 months away. So this is coming up. It's the first halving event, cuts the supply of CKB being issued to miners in half. We're going to have some miners that I'm sure are a little upset about that, but this is one thing that's been planned and necessary since the very beginning. In order to have an effectively fixed supply, there has to be an issuance schedule, and it has to decrease over time. So this is the big important one that's coming out. Let's actually bring up the link. And why don't we just let's see. Here we go. So now on the countdown, we're at 2 months, 18 days, 18 hours, 17 minutes, and 30 seconds approximately until we hit the halving itself. So this is nervoshalving.com. If you haven't seen it, there's some information here about what the halving event is exactly and what the significance is. I'd recommend that you read through this if you haven't. It's a quick read here. It's just a couple paragraphs. This is important stuff coming up for our ecosystem. It's really a milestone for us because this is the 4-year mark. This actually happens on November 19th, 2023. And it's a time for celebration for the most part. So we're definitely, I know we're having a live stream. Any other plans that we have going on, Matt?
Yeah, so we put a call out there to say if anyone wants to host a IRL meetup around the halving, to let us know, and then we'll figure out how we can support. I don't think there's been much traction on that front. So from what I can see, all effort at this point will go to the live stream. Yeah, I think we've got, I saw 6 figs in the crowd of the chat. Yeah, I think anyone who I guess has some talents or good vibes to share, definitely reach out and get involved. I think that's going to be, well, we'll do at least a couple hours, I think, of just the community hanging out and yeah, just highlighting different people and everyone getting to share that moment, which I guess, again, the contrast between IRL and live stream, I think live stream really fits for the dispersed nature of our community. I mean, I know people may have a couple friends in their city that are fans of Nervos, and yeah, if you want to get some people together and grab a drink, a little bit of food, let us know. And but yeah, I think from my end, a lot of this effort is just going to go to making it just a special occasion on this live stream. And yeah, if anyone has a guitar or a stand-up bit, something, yeah, would love to have you be a part of this celebration, because I think it's a huge milestone for our community. I know a lot of people think about halvings in terms of the block reward being cut, or this fixed supply, or miners turning off their machines, but I think those are really minor considerations in the scope of things. It really is about the community coming together for what is a massive milestone. I mean, 4 years of a network being live is a really long time, and I think those of us who have been there every step of the way know how long that is, and that this really is a huge milestone for our community. We really need to celebrate that we're all here still doing this and believing in what we're doing here.
Yeah, it's definitely a thing, and for me, I think this is one of those things that it becomes almost more important in retrospect sometimes, because like I was around in the Bitcoin community when they had their first halving, going from 50 to 25 issuance, and that was, I don't want to say it was unimportant, because it absolutely was, but at the same time, it was almost like lackluster to some extent, right? We all saw it coming.
Yeah.
But then in retrospect, you look at that and you're just like, wow, I could have been mining at 50 Bitcoin and now it's only 25. And then, another 4 years later, it's only 12.5. Man, it used to be 50, right? Yeah. You see that contrast, and you see the effect that it actually has in retrospect. So anyway, this is one of those. This is the first one. But now that we actually have the knowledge of seeing what it did in the Bitcoin ecosystem, hopefully people will actually understand how significant it is in Nervos. Let's see. So we have, I think we might have 1 or 2 questions here. Let's pop up this first one here. If I add a passphrase to my ledger and move CKB to the hidden wallet, will Neuron show the CKB balance of the hidden wallet?
Yeah, so I was going back and forth a bit about this. I saw this question on Discord as well. I'm really not sure. I want to say that a lot of that's just handled by Ledger, and if you've opened the hidden wallet on Ledger, then whatever Neuron is looking for, it'll expose things correctly. So yeah, in my eyes, it first is a question for Ledger, and then yeah, I don't. Yeah, I guess definitely do it with a test amount. Always best practices. But yeah, I think Ledger is going to be the best to advise on this, because I think from the Neuron perspective, whatever it's asking Neuron or the Ledger for is going to be the same, and it's just going to differ in what Ledger is sending back to Neuron.
Right. Yeah, I'm trying to completely understand that question, and it sounds to me like you want to create a hidden wallet that's just not in Neuron.
Well, it's so I think what it is you have a like your 8-digit thing that you plug in the Ledger. So you have two of them. One is like a main wallet, and then or a second could be like a dummy wallet. And depending on which one of those 8 digits you plug in, the Ledger unlocks to either one of those wallets. So people can use this to hide certain amounts. But
Okay. All right. Interesting. I don't fully understand that. I have a Ledger, by the way, 2 of them, but I don't fully understand what you're referring to. But anyway, yeah, that is definitely interesting. Okay. So let's see. I think we have a second one here. Let's pull up this question regarding, why did you just minimize it on my screen? Now I can't see. Okay. Regarding the staking on the Nervos wallet in the future, could we just stake it and not have to worry about running it on a computer? I think the answer to that, well, actually, I don't fully know. That depends on which proof of stake mechanism is implemented. Like particularly, I think we're talking about Axon here. With proof of stake, the answer to that is no. With delegated proof of stake, the answer to that is usually yes. And they did put delegated proof of stake. I've seen that on there several times. Something tells me I don't know if that's going to be first or not. Matt, do you happen to know the answer to that one?
No, I don't know anything about that deep into Axon.
Okay, all right. So yeah, sorry, we don't have the answer to that just yet. I don't think we want to make necessarily any promises on dates for that either.
I read that as the DAO of, if you lock CKB in the DAO, do you have to keep Neuron running?
Oh, well, yeah, that's totally
that was my take on the question, just because we don't really have any staking with Axon yet. So to be clear, once you deposit the CKB in the DAO, you can turn off your computer. You don't have to keep it running. It'll just continue to work just fine.
Okay, and let's see. Here's another one here. What if locking the CKB on Nervos DAO gives NFT that provide access or privileges to activities in the ecosystem? That sounds almost like it's an idea. Like what could you do? Yeah. Well, I mean, this is one of the main thing. The main purpose for locking things in the DAO is that you're not really using it, right? That you are signifying and guaranteeing that you are not occupying state space. That's why the DAO is actually issuing some extra to offset inflation. It's actually issuing you extra coins. We get questions around this type of thing from people who don't fully understand oftentimes what proof of stake is. You are providing a service, right? So there's no such thing as money for nothing, which you really got to embrace that. If you're not doing anything, there's no reason to pay you proceeds. So if you're on a different chain that's making that promise, everybody is staking, which means that everybody's getting the same amount, which means it doesn't matter in the first place. So you have to be providing a service or doing a specific task. So in the case of the Nervos DAO, it is your lockup and guarantee that you are not taking up state space is why you're getting offset that inflation. It's part of the entire tokenomics and the targeted inflation on how we actually make it a deflationary supply. So what can you actually do? There are a few things that you can still do though. Right now, you're able to vote using a Metaphoro. So for the community fund DAO, you can actually link up. If you're using the Neuron Wallet, you can link up your full balance that's locked in the DAO and use that to actually vote in the community fund. So that's one of the things, and we want to open up more voting on other issues in the future too. But that's not quite ready yet. We're actually waiting on some features from Metaphoro. They say they're working on delegation. So if they can get that to us, I think that's going to open up some doors. So that's one of the things that we can do definitely with that. And there's a second project that I want to mention, which is iCKB, which is the replacement for DCKB. That's the one where you lock things in the DAO and you're issued a fungible token in return, and then you can actually use that to some extent in DeFi, right? And the idea behind that is that this is a token, a DeFi token that is actually slowly accruing in value over time because of that interest that's coming from the DAO. So anyway, those are a couple of examples of the things that you can do while something's locked in the DAO, and hopefully we'll have some more use cases for that in the future. Anything that you wanted to add to that, Matt?
Yeah. I think on the concept of an NFT, because CKB is UTXO based, effectively when you create that deposit, it kind of functions as an NFT. So right now, that's the way Metaphoro works. You just prove that you own this deposit, and then you can vote. So I think it's more of a matter of people coming up with ways to, I guess, for DAO holders to do things rather than needing to implement something on chain. Yeah, but as Jordan said, the more things will progress on that front, because that's what it's been intended for.
Okay. Let's see. And then, Matt, did you happen to spot any more questions? I think I got them all there.
Last one. Are we going to stake CKB on Axon, or will there be another token?
We go. Okay. Yeah. Let's see. I can't highlight that one. Do we? Oh, there it is. There it is. Do you happen to know, Matt? Do we have an answer on that one?
Everything I've seen is you create another token, and that's your staking token. I don't think there's anything that would prevent someone. Well, you'd probably have to do like wrap CKB if you wanted to make CKB the staking token of the chain. I think it does. Like if you think about the concept of slashing, I think it gets challenging because CKB is a utility token. You wouldn't want to destroy CKB because it has utility. You want to store the state on chain. So in that sense, creating another token makes more sense. I understand everyone is always looking for ways for CKB to be utilized, and this would be one way if you were staking CKB to secure other chains. Yeah, there's nothing stopping someone from doing it, but it's not the way that the team has been implementing things so far. It would be you create another token.
Yeah. I like definitely Axon has a capability of creating new tokens, and as we see more chains roll out with Axon in the future, I think all of those, it's safe to say they'll all probably have their own unique tokens that are used. But if they're integrating with L1, it is absolutely passing that value to L1 and to some extent, and also just the general ecosystem. It's very, very beneficial to the ecosystem to have all of these things in close proximity, especially with the interoperability function of Axon and its ability to utilize the cell model directly. That's an important one. Like I mentioned earlier, that's the big differentiator between some of the L2s that are out there, between the Cosmos universe. It's our ability to link into that L1 and actually utilize that flexibility on the Axon chain.
And yeah, okay, I guess I'll add one last thing on the subject of people wanting CKB to be locked up. I know that this is because CKB has utility. This is something everyone always thinks about is storing data on CKB, using those CKB, which really, in my eyes, is just one component out of all of this. If people believe in CKB as an asset and they see that they could get a percentage of that CKB every year by locking in the DAO, then those CKB are going to get locked up in the DAO. And I think just thinking about it one-dimensionally in terms of storing data or locking up CKB to secure other chains, like I think it's missing the forest for the trees in that it really is just about a broad audience seeing CKB as a valuable asset, and then that drives the economic model, whether that's people using CKB to store data or locking it in the DAO, or using it as a foundation of other things. It really is just about people seeing value in the asset.
Right. Well said. Okay, so we are over time a little bit. We should probably wrap things up. Let's see. Any things you want to final thoughts that you have, Matt, before we wrap up here?
So one thing stood out to me from the short talk I did at Stanford, and I suggest everyone check it out. It's only a few minutes, and I feel like, well, I've been told it does a good job of explaining why CKB is exciting, and to me it was encouraging to speak to that kind of an audience. 5 years into this project, I think a lot of times when we talk to people about how long CKB has been live or we've been working on this, they just assume like we just haven't found our way, and we won't, because most of the time in crypto, if after 5 years you haven't mooned, then you're a dead project. And like, there's countless examples of that. But I was really encouraged by the feedback from one audience member in particular that I talked to for about 20 minutes after. And I think, for a certain audience that really knows what they're talking about, hearing about CKB for the first time really is an eye-opening experience. And for me, it's definitely encouraging to have that experience in that forum.
Yeah, it absolutely is. This is one of those projects that me and Matt were just talking about the other day. And we've both been with the foundation for many years now. And one of the most dreaded questions that we get is still, what is the elevator pitch of Nervos?
Yeah.
Right? It is such a deep and complicated project that it is very difficult to explain to somebody in plain terms why this is an important one. Now, if they're a person who definitely, especially those who are developers to some extent, and they take the time to understand it, they're usually pretty blown away by what has actually been accomplished here. But getting past that, because it is not a 30-second conversation, right? I think it's usually repeated conversations to truly express to them all of the value that is actually being provided. So anyway, I mean, this is a continuous thing that we're always trying to look for new ways. And definitely, I think that the Nervos Nation videos that have been put out have been very, very helpful in giving that first high-level introduction to a lot of people. So definitely getting better. And I'm hopeful for the future, definitely, on what we're going to be able to accomplish with that. There's a lot of stuff being built all the time. And it's... Yep. I know it's not always visible. That's one of the things that we've been working on, is how do we make these things a little bit more visible, because sometimes it's hidden, it's buried in GitHub somewhere. And I've had people send me DMs about, they've been exploring in GitHub and they saw this and that. What does it mean, right? We recognize that. We recognize that we need to get that to the surface so you guys actually see a little bit more about what's going on. And there's a lot of it. Like what we touched on today is a concise list. We cut out of a lot of stuff. A lot of the stuff we cut out is because it's very developer-centric stuff, optimizations here, this enhancement to this pool over there, lots of stuff that keeps things running better. But that's not always the most meaningful to the average person. They don't actually understand why that's relevant. And quite frankly, I don't always understand either. It's really technical stuff. It takes a lot of time to get in there deep enough to fully understand what this stuff really means. So we did. We had to cut out probably, I'd say, 2/3 to 3/4 of the updates out there. But if you are interested in that stuff, it's available on GitHub, and you can actually see it from the Twitter account. CKB Dev is the account. Every time they publish a new thing on CKB, a new developer report, which I think is bi-weekly, that gets posted there. So if you're interested in that stuff, it is available to you. We deal in the open as much as we can, and that stuff is always available on GitHub. So without further ado, I think we need to wrap up here. We are over time. Matt, thank you for taking some time out of your day to join us again. And I want to make sure to thank everybody out there who's watching at home. You're the reason why we're doing this. You're the reason why we're working so hard on this stuff. So we really appreciate you coming here and taking some time to join us today. Take care, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Take care. Thanks, Jordan.